OK。
但是你听不见别人啊，有人给你。
Hello， 大家好，这个
已经又来了。
啊，这是庞哥，你好，哈哈哈。这你俩也是来看直播的啊？现场直播？
我进去看。
没事，这也不是这个一会儿主要是PO讲嘛上，我看看咱们现在有几个朋友了，都打个招呼呗啊。有5个人是吧？这意思应该是。Pegasus P 大写。你是 VIP 还是普通的 ？Pegasus 66688叹号。哦，我可以啊，你有了，我可以给你共享。
此视频已被上传者移除。
这个查一下。哎呀，进来的朋友们打个招呼啊！这个听得清楚吗？这个我们先测试一下。这个说不了话可以打个字哈，在右手边应该是。哦。Oh! String. I know, string. Okay.
Is Paul there? Show on screen. Hello.
Hi.
Hi. This is me. That's my hand.
Can you see both of us?
No, it's only half of you. So you need to come.
Hold on, we're gonna wait for a few minutes because I think initially we got a wrong QR code sent out, so.
Go that way just a little bit.
Yeah, I see. Figuring this out. How are you, happy couple?
Very good.
Maybe you could also talk about like what you've bought at a track and how well they've done. You know, you could highlight on.
Yeah. This is the right one.
So we're not live yet, obviously. Can you hear us, Alan?
Yeah. Here we go.
Can you hear us now?
Yes.
Yep.
Loud and clear.
Good,
Okay.
good, good.
Nice.
So is there anything in particular you want to have covered?
Oh, I think Rini has got like a PowerPoint. So,
Yeah.
so I think mainly we'll be sharing about, what at the first sight, what are you looking for from a horse? Maybe, and then Rini at the end, Rini will be showing a few obvious sort of a crooked knees and etc.
Yeah.
And some motion of a horse that's moving. So maybe we can share with the audience about how you look at them and what negative effect might be happening with the horse later in their career.
Yeah.
We'll talk about
I probably think it's probably best to start off with giving a bit of a background to who we are and how our experiences in the industry have been, how long we've been in the industry and all that, just to give people an idea of who we are and how long we've been doing it and the success we've had and the different aspects, how I was born into the industry and what I've done in the industry and all that, just to give them an overview of who we are. So, because if it's going to be an hour long, it's going to take a lot of
part of your life will be covered.
Yeah.
Well, it's not even that. It's just it's hard to talk on conformation for an hour when you're trying to keep it, fairly, understandable for people.
Yeah. Sure. Right. We're just having a little bit of technical issue before, and
No
I think
problem.
we got about 8 people online now.
Yeah.
So we'll just probably wait for another 5-6 minutes.
Yeah, that's fine.
No problem.
And are there people who've showed interest or that are already doing some business with you or?
Yeah, mainly they're a member of ours, but they wanted to know more about what we do and how we do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they'd like to hear. And so on Thursday we're going to Hanoi Farm, and we're gonna check out maybe 26 horses.
Okay.
13 of them that we haven't seen, and the other 13 is on our short list. So we're taking some of them going to Hanoi, and we'll show them a few horses, and they can practice what you taught them today and on a real life horse.
Yeah. My new home.
Hopefully they can.
Hanoi.
Oh, you're going to do your quarantine there?
Yeah.
They have a nice guest house.
Yeah.
They do, yes.
My guest house.
Yeah.
I was claiming it.
So Catheryne going to Adelaide.
Yeah, it depends on orders, but that's the plan. Yeah.
That's not very good for Paul coming home and Adelaide. There's a lot of flies.
That's what he always
Absolutely.
says. Yeah, that's what he
I'm
always
missing
says.
it again. Yahoo!
I'm
flying back to Brisbane for the Cuta sale.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the last time I went to Adelaide, I almost feel like I forgot about my beekeeping gears, because I wanted to cover myself. Yeah, I wanted to cover myself like with all the sort of bee protectors.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
Getting me mental.
So when was that? 3 years ago?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You just couldn't do any international travel this time of year. But just thought to, as we talk, to share with you a little bit of things in the clubhouse. So we have different corners. So I'm actually sitting in front of the Dragon Queen corner.
Oh, that's the Dragon Queen.
So here it is.
So the trophies, yeah.
Yeah, so that's the trophy from Vesperi Classic.
Okay,
Very
cool.
good.
Yeah, and on the other side of like here, that was the winning photo, and this is Vesperi Classic.
Yeah, great.
So we for all the group winners in that we own, so we have a Dragon's Dome corner as well down the other side. Yeah, so once they win win a group race, we'll have put together. Hopefully, we're not gonna stuff ourselves with all the bar stools, but once they have they win a group race, we put up a bar stool covered with the winning clothes.
Okay.
And then they have their own corner.
That looks like Bone Crusher in the background.
Yeah, and it's that one is Frank.
Yeah.
Who's riding the horse.
Yeah.
That was a very long time ago.
It is.
And that's Bone Crusher, and that's Bone Crusher. Yeah. Poor Lance is not here, but he won't be happy here. We have a picture of him. That's when he won the Japan Cup.
Japan Cup on Hocks.
Yeah, but we don't have anywhere to hang this photo, so he is on the ground.
I owned a half sister to Hocks when she won.
Yeah, and that's a gift from. Oh yeah.
Paid 17,000
for Brew. Yeah, you can probably share a story of Brew, because Brew was Hocks' son.
Yep.
Yeah.
He'll get a mention, that's for sure.
Yeah, so I got a special gift from one of my friends over there. So that's the New Zealand racing history. The huge book over there.
New Zealand
I think they only
history.
made. Yeah, I think they only made like a 1,000 copy of those. This is
the
number
Tapestry
24.
of the Turf, is it? Is it called the Tapestry of the Turf?
No, it's a huge book, really, really heavy.
Well, what's it called?
A salute to trotting.
Is that what?
A salute to trotting. So it's probably a trotting industry book.
Oh, it's a harness
history book.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a harness one. But I think there will be a racing one. But we have a lot of collectives.
Yeah, the racing one to get's called Tapestry of the Turf.
All right. So I'll probably
John
need to get.
Costello and Pat Finnegan wrote it.
All right. I
That's
probably
the one
need
to
to go to an antique shop and see if I can collect one. This one was
you'll
from
find one.
This is probably from Booth.
Okay.
Yeah, antique shop, very small antique shop that I drive past, and my friend bought it for me as a gift.
Yeah. Do you know that there's a whole lot of memorabilia that used to be stored at Ellerslie sitting in a container going to waste?
Yeah, we actually went for shopping in the container.
Oh, you did? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, we went into the room and we picked most of the paintings in our clubhouse from the container.
From the container. Oh, cool.
That's
good.
That's great.
That's good. Good it's being used.
Yeah, because they were going to put together.
Have a look at the clubhouse when I'm home.
Yeah, in a short while.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're. Yeah, so we'll probably just start in a minute. So everybody's happy. Okay. Let's go here.
I swear that we saw this. I don't know.
So just as we go, so because we have a few of our clients are not very much English as a first language, probably all of them.
Yeah.
So just when we're talking, maybe we talk a little bit slower.
Yeah.
So that will help them understand and maybe use the easiest sort of English.
Yeah.
Yeah. It will be a good learning curve for them. Today it's not just about horses; it's an English lesson for them as well. Okay, maybe we should make a start.
And then Rennie will come on and share her screen as well for the PowerPoint.
Yeah, I'll just make a quick introduction of you two, and then we'll leave it to you to do the rest.
Perfect.
Okay. So hello everyone. This is Alan, and we have the pleasure to have Paul and Catheryne to be with us today. as you know, we will be going down to the farms on Thursday and to check out some horses. So so today the main goal is that Paul and Catheryne are the experts and top of the business as in selecting a very good horse. So they will be sharing their how they select a horse and so today we'll be a very good horse. And Catheryne to maybe introduce yourself, and then Rainey will be helping with some PowerPoints. But maybe at the beginning, we'll just hear your story, how you get into horse racing, and maybe about a bit of success. And we will look forward to catching you up in a week in New Zealand when you're back. Okay, so welcome. Hello, everybody. Welcome, Paul
Hello.
and Catheryne.
Right. Thank you, Alan. Thank you very much for the introduction. And thank you for the opportunity to speak to your members. Horse racing has been in my life fairly much since I was born. To give you an idea that in 1960, the Centennial Melbourne Cup winner called Hijinks was bred by my mother's parents. And they bred Hijinks from the Great Northern Oaks winner, which was run at Ellerslie, and that Great Northern Oaks winner was in 1949. So it goes back a very long time in my family. Because of my family's interest in horse racing, myself became very interested at a very early age. My earliest memory of horse racing was as an almost 4-year-old in 1965 when my uncle, a jockey called Buzz Leggett, won the Great Northern Hurdles and Great Northern Steeplechase double at Ellerslie in Queen's Birthday of 1965 on a horse called Smoke Ring. Very famous races held at Ellerslie. And obviously the Great Northern Hurdles is over 3 miles. It was run then on the Saturday of Queen's Birthday weekend. And then 2 days later, the same horse won the Great Northern Steeplechase over 4 miles over the Ellerslie Hill. Famous. He was I think one of only 3 horses, Smoke Ring, to ever complete the Great Northern Hurdles Steeplechase double. And that weekend, I recall as a 4-year-old, almost 5-year-old, the excitement in my family that our uncle had ridden Smoke Ring to win this great double. And that certainly inspired me to become very interested in horse racing, so much so that my brother and I were fanatics on it, and we started doing everything in our lives around horse racing, including having our own running races at home around a specially designed course like a race course with jumps that we made ourselves out of the tea tree at the back of our dairy farm near Matamata. And we would always call ourselves after our favorite racehorses. We had ponies in those days, and we also dressed up as jockeys and rode our ponies like they were racehorses. So we were very much enamored by horse racing from a very young age. When I was around 7 years old, the dairy farm next door to us was purchased by an owner breeder, and he moved a stud next door to us, and he stood 3 stallions, and he also had some very good racehorses that he owned and trained. One of them was a horse called Johnny Cash, which was named after the famous country and western singer. And when I was probably 9 years old, my father took Johnny Cash the racehorse, towed him in a horse trailer 2 hours north to Auckland to the Intercontinental Hotel on Wynyard Street in Auckland, and put the horse in a service lift at the hotel, took him up 3 stories to the reception area of the hotel, and introduced Johnny Cash, the racehorse, to Johnny Cash, the famous country and western singer. And we watched that live on television when I was about 9 years old. And once again, having a horse stud next door to us increased our interest not only in horse racing, but also in breeding. Later in my life, I selected a horse that was from a half-sister to Johnny Cash, the racehorse. And I selected that horse specifically in 1986 to win the Great Northern Steeplechase. And fortunately for us, my selection was right. And in 1989, probably the worst named steeplechaser ever for a jumping horse named Tumblin' Down, which pretty much translate to falling over, won the 1989 Great Northern Steeplechase. By that stage, I had worked in horse stables from a very young age as an 11-year-old in my hometown of Matamata for New Zealand's then leading horse trainer, Dave O'Sullivan. I became very much part of the O'Sullivan family. And from the age of 11, I worked every school holidays and weekends at the stables as a general stable hand. In those days, I also rode training and was hoping to be a jockey until I suddenly became too big when I was about 16 years old. And my jockey days were over, so I had to think of a new way I could make horse racing my job. When I left school, I was fortunate enough to be accepted into the Auckland Technical Institute's journalism course. And I did a journalism course there for 12 months, at which time I then became a cadet racing reporter at the New Zealand Herald. I was at the New Zealand Herald for 4 years and then left my role as a racing reporter, shifted back to Matamata, and worked full-time for 1 year for Dave O'Sullivan. At that time, I was the foreman for his 2-year-old stable in Matamata. And one of the horses he had in his stable at that time was the mother of Hocks, who won the 1989 Japan Cup and later became the dam of the 2000 Melbourne Cup winner, Brew. During my time back in my hometown of Matamata, I then bought a business which did all the race form for the Auckland and Waikato district race meetings and was published in the race books that you buy on race day. I did that for 3 years, and during that time I also was appointed the assistant race day judge for the Waikato district, which was most enjoyable. I then also was asked to return to racing reporting and became the senior racing reporter on the Waikato Times in 1983. During that time, I also helped form the New Zealand Equine Workers Association, and I also formed the Waikato Cadet Equine Scheme, which is still running today. In 1984, I formed a bloodstock company to start selecting bloodstock using my knowledge of racing, my knowledge of pedigrees. My brother and I had been very much studying yearling sale catalogues for many, many years when our father was taking us to the yearling sales from the age of about 10 onwards. So I had already established a wealth of knowledge on pedigrees. My brother and I both knew by the age of 10 the pedigrees, the mother and father of every racehorse in New Zealand off by heart. We also knew what colours they raced in. We were quite fanatical about this. I started my bloodstock company. I left journalism again, and in 1985 I travelled to England and spent 9 months in England studying international pedigrees and international racing, and came back to New Zealand and carried on as a bloodstock consultant and agent, buying and selling and selecting horses for many people. In the late 1980s, I was buying horses for Cambridge Stud, Sir Patrick Hogan, many studs in New Zealand and many stables in New Zealand. I became very interested in yearling buying, and I was helped by New Zealand's leading thoroughbred veterinarian, Dr. Jim Marks, who explained a lot to me about the conformation of horses to become racehorses. He was a leading racehorse vet and also a leading yearling vet. So I was very fortunate. He was the O'Sullivan stable vet. And I was very fortunate to be able to learn so much from this great man who taught me so much about the needs and requirements of conformation for yearlings to become racehorses. I ventured out on my own as a bloodstock consultant in 1990. And during my period as a bloodstock selector, very much centering on yearling selection, I've managed to select the winners of 141 individual stakes winners and 260 individual stakes performers, horses that have either won or finished second and third in stakes races.
It's 61 now.
I've also purchased 38 individual Group 1 winning racehorses that have won 54 Group 1 races. It's a record that I'm very proud of, and over 30 of those individual Group 1 winning horses have been purchased as yearlings, and more than 180 of my stakes performed horses have been purchased as yearlings. I've had success buying yearlings that have won for a number of trainers, and they've won in a number of countries. They've won in Australia, New Zealand, England, America, Hong Kong, Singapore, South Africa, South America. It's a long list of countries, and I'm very proud of the record that I've achieved. I have been the managing owner of 7 individual Group 1 winners, including 3 Derby winners, and the Melbourne Cup winner. I did train for a while in partnership with my brother in Matamata. I trained for 3 full racing seasons, and during that time I trained 5 individual Group 1 winners. I also was one of the original trackside TV presenters, starting out in 1992 with what was then called Action Television, that then became Trackside, as you will know today, the TAB Trackside channel. And I was a presenter and analyst for Trackside, TAB Trackside, for 7 years. My specialties are thoroughbred yearling selection, racehorse selection, management, and training, although these days I'm no longer a trainer. We also select breeding stock and have been very successful, bringing many international families from around the world into New Zealand and Australia. I've been fairly much immersed in racing all my life, and one of my proudest moments was winning the 2000 Millennium Melbourne Cup with Brew, who I selected as a racehorse and was his managing owner. And of course, Brew was a son of Hocks, who won the 1989 Japan Cup and who was trained by the O'Sullivans. So my life has always been about horse racing. I've been involved in many facets of horse racing. I'm currently a director of the New Zealand Racing Hall of Fame. I was an inaugural member who started that great foundation company who selects the greatest people in New Zealand who have performed, both people and horses, who joined the New Zealand Racing Hall of Fame. I was joined coming up 9 years ago by my partner, Catheryne, and she herself has had a very interesting career in the equine industries. I'll now pass you on to Catheryne so she can tell you about her background in horses and in horse racing.
Hello, everyone. So to follow on from that, I'm originally from the heart of America in Nebraska, which is very agricultural farming country. Always had a very strong interest in horses, but did not come from a horsey family. From a young age, and I got involved in horses. One of the first things I did when I was 15 was to participate and compete in a horse judging contest. And it's amazing how what we do now is a follow-on from that. So for the training, for the competition, we literally analyzed photos, videos, we did slow motion to really, really fine-tune what those horses were doing and which were, the first best horse, second best horse, third best horse, fourth best horse. And then had to place those horses in order based on their conformation, based on their structure, based on their movement, and then give verbal reasons to a judge to explain why I chose them to be first place, second place, third place, fourth place, etc. Now, the first time that I competed in those classes, it was a statewide competition. And I was one of the youngest competitors, and they had announced the winners as far as the people participating, the third place, fourth place, and so on and so forth. And much to my surprise, I was grand champion and won the whole competition. So I suppose that early training of the importance of structure, balance, movement, what creates a quality horse, and then being able to articulate why has set up a very good foundation. I also went on to train professionally and compete in a sport called reining, which is a Western sport. I had about 25 horses in work full time and would take up to 15 horses away for a number of weeks at a time to compete. And that resulted in a number of world or national titles and a few reserve titles as well. And some good results and happy clients, a lot of trophies. And I was doing that from a very, very young age. I also was very interested in science and in sports science and in veterinary science and anything that had to do with soundness, movement, performance, equine physiology. And again, all of those interests contribute to what we're able to analyze when we're selecting the next champion. So I akin what we do as to being like talent scouts for elite level athletes. So we go and assess a number of horses and from our previous training, experience, knowledge, and education, that all contributes to what we see and what we're able to determine as far as which horses are most likely to perform at a high level, which horses are less likely to perform at a high level, which will be less prone to having any sort of issues or injuries, and which will be the clean, athletic, top level, well-performing horses that we're looking for. So from the science background, the competition background, my previous judging background, I came to Australia about 20 years ago. And I worked for a company. Well, my first job in racing was for Sheikh Khalifa as racing manager. So my first time ever attending the races was in Sheikh Khalifa's box at Rose Hill Racecourse. So that was a very prestigious beginning to my introduction for Australian racing. I then went on and purchased one of Sheikh Khalifa's Group 1 horses, a horse by the name of, actually New Zealand horse by the name of Sir Clive. Very, very, very good horse. And his problem when I purchased him, which I was aware of, was some feet issues. So that started a very strong, deep interest in equine hoof function. And I went on and did a lot of training in that area, and eventually started an equine rehabilitation business. So dealing with improving hoof function and improving performance through increasing the well-being and movement and soundness of the horse. So that background has also given me insight to what works and why, what doesn't work and why. So when we're choosing horses, we can be specific in avoiding potential problems, and also selecting horses that will have the best capacity to perform. So from that rehabilitation side and the conformation aspect and the science aspect, all of that comes into now joining Paul, and we've been doing international work together for between 8 and 9 years, so a long time now. We have lived in the northern and southern hemisphere, half and half for many of these years. And during this time, we have attended sales in Australia, New Zealand, England, Ireland, France, Germany, Japan, America, and a number of places in each of these locations. We have also inspected individually up to 16,000 yearlings per year. So our eye is very, very practiced. So what we can see in a few seconds or a few minutes is very thorough, and our eye can assess very quickly a way of movement, what we like in the horse's structure, what we like in their character, in their attitude. And those are all things that we take into consideration. We're our specialist yearling buyers. That's really an area that we've had tremendous results at a very high level. We also do buy some foals, and we also do buy racehorses that are performing, as well as breeding stock. So we have a lot of experience across the board in a number of areas. What else?
Experience in Dubai.
Yes. So I've spent time in Dubai with Mike DeCock's group, doing a lot of work around, again, increasing well-being, increasing the performance of the horse through having sound, happy horses. I've come across some very, very advanced, very advanced programs and modalities that are new and innovative and cutting edge. Things like Formahoof, things like the Equiscope are all very much leading technology and leading the way. So with horses and with the horse industry, it's a strong combination of tradition, but also taking the advancements of science. And what we do is both an art and a science. So it's something that can be difficult to define because it takes years and years and layers of experience to comprehensively encompass what every aspect that's important. So yes, so the time in Dubai was also very interesting. What else? Let me think. I've ridden track work. I've trained reining horses. I've done a portion of a 3-year program on equine osteopathy, which also deals with the body as a whole and enhancing the health and well-being, and thereby having a happy horse that moves well. So I suppose Paul has the history of the races and the pedigrees, and also has a great eye, and we're an excellent team. And the results are there. We've been doing very well. Should talk about Aussie rules. The first time that Paul sent me out to look at a group of horses on my own, he had 80 colts, and this was in England. And I came back with my second look list, because we look at every horse and assess every horse as an individual. And then the ones that we think are better than most, we write down and make a list to see a second time. Now, there were a handful of horses on my second list, but I said there are 3, but really there is one that is very special that I think is very good. So Paul says, show me the one. We get out the one horse, and he shakes his head, and I thought, oh, have I missed something? But no, he was very impressed and very happy. And he says, that would be right. Leave it to you to find the best horse we have seen. And at that stage, we had looked at,
2,000.
Yeah, about 2,000 horses already. So he was very happy. We bought the horse for clients for about 38,000 guineas, which is similar to the pound. At that time, that was $60,000 Australian. The horse was sold about a year and a half later for 1.6 million.
To Hong Kong.
So that was a very, very good result. So since then, he decided that I was okay at what I did.
She got the thumbs
up. And we have continued to go and work as a team. And one thing I will go into, we are very thorough. We believe that horses, you need to do the work and look at every horse and inspect every horse, and not rule horses out based on pedigree. And in doing that, we feel that we find our clients good horses that have high potential and that can range from a variety of price points, where horses with a good page, with a good pedigree, that's excellent when you can have both, but you also you have to pay for it. So you don't want to rule out an athlete. So we're very, very thorough and do a lot of work, and very, very fair in the way we assess every horse.
One of the greatest influences in my life has been my father, who will be 93 in April. He has had a great long life, and he has been very supportive of our role in horse racing. And I remember as a youngster asking Dad questions. He worked at a horse stud around the road from us called Evergreen Lodge when we were young, before the other stud appeared next to us. And he always said to me that every stallion will have its champion, and that champion will normally be a freak. And I saw before we came on air, Alan had a photograph in the background of a mighty horse called Bone Crusher. And Bone Crusher was by a stallion called Pag Asa. Pag Asa was a sprinter who was bought in Australia and came across to New Zealand and was actually trained by Dave O'Sullivan. And he was quite a good sprinter, but he hardly had any good horses at all. And he did have one champion, and that was called Bone Crusher. So I've always remembered my father's advice. So when other people are saying, oh, that stallion's had 5 or 6 crops and he's not yet a good stallion, and they therefore dismiss looking at the yearlings, we carry on and we look at everything as an athlete. And many of my best horses that I've chosen have been by these stallions that haven't had a lot of success, but we've managed to find the best one by that stallion because we keep going and looking. When people stop looking, they will never buy that stallion's champion. But we're always looking for that jewel, that diamond in amongst the haystack, the needle in the haystack that other people miss. And we've become very good at doing that. Mm. So one thing I will say before we go into the conformation is that it's not an exact science, and very much beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And Catheryne touched on it before, because of the experience we've had and the sheer volume of yearlings that we expect annually, and especially in myself and my 40 years now at analysing yearlings, I would have seen at least 500,000 or more yearlings in this period of time, probably more. So you become very trained and attuned to it, and you develop an eye. And everyone develops a separate eye, but all we can do is back our judgment. And by having people who then back our judgment, we can increase the chances of people owning a top-class racehorse. The odds are stacked against you, but as it works with us, we can actually increase that chance. And we love doing it for people, and we're very much enjoying doing it for Pegasus Bloodstock and the New Zealand Chinese Jockey Club. And it was a big thrill recently for Dragon Queen to win the Group 2 at Ellerslie. That was a fantastic result from one of our more recent yearling purchases, and a great result for Alan and his band of followers.
Yes. So I believe that there is a PowerPoint that has been put together that we can go through various aspects of what we analyze and what we're assessing when we look at a horse. So we will try to keep it keep it as straightforward as we can, and take you through a few things. When a horse comes out, we normally look at each horse initially for around 2 minutes, because we will see between 120 and 150 horses a day each when we're at a public auction. And then we will assess those horses, make our second looks. And then once we have looked at every horse, then we begin our second looks, and then we thin it down. And then we do third looks and thin it down to where we want to have only the elite top cream of the crop, the best horses for our clients. So we do all of that work to deliver a shorter selection of horses that we feel has the most potential. Now, when a horse comes out in front of us, there are professionals who show that horse and who stand the horse up in a specific way. And we really start to take notes on what stands out, the strong attributes that we like, and any attributes that we think could be a problem, or that we don't prefer. So we note in our catalog that we now have on the iPad that any notes of that horse, so a detailed analysis of each horse and what we like about that horse and what we don't like about that horse. And we can go through some of those things that we will assess now. And as Paul said, it is, you can look at a horse and what their structure is, and that's important, but also then we will get to movement, and how they move with something is also important. So
one thing I'll say, that the photo on the screen at the moment of the horse is a perfectly balanced photo, and it shows something that we look for, and it's called balance. And you can see in that photo where the length of the horse's neck from the back of its head,
back of its ears, like
back of its ears
yeah,
to its shoulder, and then the length of its back, and then the length of its hindquarters or rump are very much the same.
One third.
Mm-hmm. And now the horse in front of you now, it's very similar. The length of its rein, it has that's obviously a filly. And one thing we look for in fillies is that they have big ears. And it's an attribute that all good female horses have, is that they have very large ears, much larger than the male horses. And that filly has very big ears. She has an attractive head, good length of rein.
So long neck.
And a very nice sloping shoulder. And below the shoulder into the legs has a great length of forearm, a shorter cannon. And then you're going to the back of the shoulder, the withers. It is short to medium length of back. And then into the hindquarters, it has a good length of hindquarters. The hocks, which are with you see the white in the hind leg, and above that the black leading to the brown. That is the pointy bit is the hock. It has a good hock that stands almost directly in line with the back of its hindquarters and runs true with a nice angle on the pastern. And that to us looks like a very athletic filly.
Very balanced. Now, interesting, the first photo that Paul was describing with the one third, that was the drawing. That horse was a more muscly, stronger, looked more like a short distance type, where there we go. So more of a short distance type. So the middle of the horse is very deep. So there's a lot of room for the heart and the lungs, so they can have a big, strong heart and big lung capacity, so they can breathe and perform and fuel their body, fuel their muscles through having good size depth of girth is what we call that. So you're looking at that depth in the middle of the body to give good heart and lung capacity. So this horse is very, very compact and thicker set and muscly, where the next horse is more streamlined, and what we would say, we use the term scopy. So it means more of a long distance runner, a medium or long distance runner. So it's a little bit the same of a person who competes in running, that competes in short distances. They have big thighs and they're very, very muscly and powerful, where a long distance runner, even for humans, they're very long and thin and lean. So it's a different body style. So when we see a horse, we look at the body style also to look at what the likely distance that the horse would prefer running. And I agree with everything Paul said with this filly. We've talked about the big ears, and horses operate in a herd. And I always say that the fillies with the big ears are like the lookout for the herd, and they are more aware, and they're more, they hear things coming, and they're the fastest to run away. So a filly with big ears, we think, is a fast filly. And by filly, we mean it's a female horse, if you aren't familiar with that term. The length of rein, is the length of the neck. It's very good. And also with the lower leg in front, we want the top from the knee up to be longer than from the knee below. So we're looking for what's called the forearm, which is actually the same as, funnily enough, a horse's forearm, and then their knee is our wrist, which gets a little bit complicated, but we want a nice long forearm. And that really, from a physics point of view, gives the horse a lot of leverage and power.
The length of the forearm, as being shown on screen, depicts how long the stride can be, because it is from the bottom of the shoulder, or the shoulder,
Rennie's pointing, you can see the cursor,
and the knee. That length there is how far forward the horse extends. From below that, the knee is basically a pendulum, and the shorter from the knee to the ankle, the better, because the longer underneath the knee, the more inefficiency there is when the stride is going through the air. The longer the forearm to the knee, the longer the reach, and the better the efficiency, because along what they call cannon bone between the knee and the ankle is prone to doing a lot when it's in midair, and it isn't as efficient than a shorter area of that bone.
What do we have next for a photo? Okay, here we go. The front legs. This is good.
So a lot to do with the legs when you're looking at a horse. There's really three facets, and when you're looking at a horse, its body and strength of its body, its length and what we call scope, and also the legs, because the legs have to carry that body. And as we know, like all human athletes, horses are prone to injury, and horses that are less correct in their front legs and their hind legs are definitely more prone to injury. But I will preface that by saying that they do all come in all shapes and sizes, and you've got to be very aware of what is sitting on top in the body of the legs when you're making your final analysis of whether or not a horse can get away with some incorrectness in its leg structure, because very few horses are born with the perfect correct conformation. And as you can see on the first one, which says correct, the imaginary line from the top of the shoulder is running through the middle of the forearm, down through the middle of the knee, down towards the back of the ankle, and down to the back of the hoof. And that is the perfect side-on leg conformation. The pastern is at a good angle. The pastern is between the ankle and the hoof.
Yes, good job. Yeah.
In this next one, where it says the pastern is too straight, between the ankle and the hoof, it is sitting at a too high angle. So therefore, this angle, and when it hits the ground, will cause a jarring effect to go right up through the bone and into the shoulders. And a lot of the horses that are like this in the front leg conformation will have a jarring effect in their shoulders, and they will be predisposed to feeling pain from the vibration in their shoulders,
and their joints,
and all of their joints going up through their fetlock, their knee to their shoulder. And often those horses need to have rain affected
soft ground
racing surfaces, because if they run on firm tracks, especially as we can get in New Zealand in the middle of summer, they are much more prone to that jarring effect. In the very next one, in C, we have the opposite, where the pastern is either long or soft.
Or both.
Or both. And most of the pasterns that are too long between the fetlock, the ankle, and the hoof are prone to too much elasticity. And when they are too elastic, they are putting pressure on the tendons and the ligaments from the knee to the fetlock, and also the ligaments in the pastern. They are overstretched. And when those pasterns sit down too much, it also takes a long time. It's probably only, we're talking hundreds of milliseconds here, but for each stride, the longer it takes that horse to come out of those pasterns to then drive forward again and break, what they call break over, is adding, in a race that's over, say, 1,600 meters, if it's taking a couple of extra milliseconds per stride to get to the next stride, that can add up to half a second in a race, and half a second is about 5 lengths. So you've got to be careful. Now, one thing I will say about pasterns, we also have to take into account when we're looking at these horses, the genetic factors of the horses. And a lot of these, some of these issues, like the long pasterns and the next one, the back at the knee, it doesn't necessarily mean that horses cannot perform with these problems. It's just that less of them do. But there are certain genetic breeds that tend to be born with some of these physical impediments or discrepancies, but our understanding of the genetics and the pedigrees is that more of those horses bred by those particular stallions in sire lines can perform with some of these attributes. So we have in here the next one, back at the knee, and that is when the front of the knee is much more towards that middle line. Now, this is putting huge amount of strain on every stride. When the horse's hoof hits the ground, it is forcing the knee much further backwards than it should be, and is putting strain once again on all of these ligaments, and especially the knee. The knee's made up of 3 bones.
Well, they're rows of 3.
Rows of 3,
yeah.
And they're susceptible to bone chips and bone problems in the knee. And you get that very much with the horses that are back at the knee. There are some theories that horses at the back at the knee are speed horses, fast horses over short distances. And when I was talking about the sire lines that have been known to get away with some of these issues, one of the greatest stallions the world's seen in the last 25 to 30 years was a stallion called Danehill. Mm-hmm. And many of his horses, the Danehill line that we call it, are born with this back at the knee situation. And it really hasn't stopped them from performing. So you've got to have a lot of knowledge about the genetics from the past and how some of those particular pedigrees can more dominantly get away with some of these what are termed incorrect physical natures. And back at the knee horses, I would tend to not count them out 100% from buying them, but if they were from a proven line that these horses can perform through the stallion, or if they're speed horses going over short distances, it's very difficult to have that sort of conformation back at the knee and be training long distance horses. I'll let Catheryne talk to you about the buck knee and the tight behind the knee.
Okay, so buck kneed and tight behind the knee, really they're very similar. When they are by buck kneed, it's a bit like over at the knee, where tight behind the knee horses can also are often over at the knee as well. But the way that the ligaments come through and tie to the back of the knee, there's excess tension there. So when the horses go to walk, rather than the leg going, the leg going and completely straightening as it extends, it stays a bit bent. So they don't have full extension with their stride. They don't have full freedom with their stride. Now, they won't jar or have the concussive effect that they do as if one that was back at the knee. So it's a bit the opposite. But they still have a lack of ability to extend, where a back at the knee horse almost overextends the joint, but then puts a lot of pressure on that joint. So, and with all of these conformation faults, I suppose you would call them, or issues, we always look at what the horse is like in motion. So just to briefly recap, pasterns that are too straight, that they're too vertical to the ground and too upright, the horse you can get more jarring effect. But if when they move, they aren't too stiff, it depends on the tension in the ligaments. So if the ligaments are very tense, you'll get a lot of jar. If they aren't, and they move, and there's some flexibility when they move, maybe you can forgive. And it also depends on what the structure of the body. Is it a heavy horse? Is it wide and heavy, or is it a light framed, very athletic, agile horse? So you look at, is what is above on top of the horse how is that going to affect what's below? The same if they're, as Paul was saying, if they're too weak and long, they have to, one, you can have strain, and two, they have to get out of those. They have to get out of those to propel forward. So that can be a waste of energy and thereby time. So they can those seconds are valuable, and they add up to links and add up to winning or not winning.
Just back to the buck need, one thing we do know is that's just usually a growth pattern of growth happening too quickly in the leg, and that can be quite easily corrected by, as a young horse, as a yearling, getting that horse out in a hill paddock, so that they're having to use and extend their legs when they're walking up hills, and that will stretch the ligaments, and you can find that buck need conformation can be quite easily corrected just by the environment that they're in. And tight behind the knee is also sometimes referred to as light below the knee. And that is therefore the side-on visual of the cannon bone, which runs between the knee and the ankle. And people do term that as light below the knee. We tend to call it tight behind the knee because to us, the lightness of bone is more from the front on view. We're more worried about light bone under the knee from a front view of the bone rather than the side on view. But you do like to see a little bit more width in the side on bone as well. We term it as tight behind the knee rather than light boned.
So we go on to the next. Okay. Super. So we've got some front legs. So as Paul was saying, you look at the width of the bone of the cannon. So that's between the knee and the fetlock. And you look at the line of the leg there. So in that middle, in the cannon, you're looking at the width. So you see if the horse has, little thin chopsticks, or if they have, really big, robust, heavy bone. And like most things, you're looking for something that is in the middle. So not too much, not too little, just the right amount. And then also you take into consideration the body on top, how heavy the horse is. To do they have a light body that will be okay with a light frame, or do they have a big heavy body and they need more strength of their bone underneath? So always looking at the whole picture as well as the specifics.
In the first photo, and that is a very true front-on version of a horse, where you're seeing correct at the top knee bone, the top carpal, and the bottom of the knee in a nice straight line. They're perfectly together and running down straight. One thing I will say about this photo is that we can look at a horse from front on, and to us, this horse is probably a little bit long in the cannon bone between the knee and the fetlock. And what we say is that its knees look halfway down its legs, whereas in the next photo on the right, that horse has a longer forearm and shorter cannon than the one on the left. And that is much more preferable. What we're seeing here in the right photo, though, is that on the left knee in the right photo, looking towards it, the actual right knee of the horse, but the left looking at it, is that this horse is in at the knee.
Well, they both are.
Both knees are in, but more so probably on the left knee looking at the horse. And that on the outside of the knee, you can see there's a deviation, that it's slightly inverted, and therefore on the medial aspect, the inside of the knee, the bones are pushed to the right of that left knee and the left of the right.
So
knee.
Instead of it being like pillars, like a column, it's like an hourglass, right? So
that puts increased pressure. Often when we see yearlings like this, we do know that they are only 1 year old, which is the equivalent of a 5-year-old child. So we know that these horses are going through growth stages, and a lot of the time when they go through their next growth stage, these conformation issues that can be there as 1-year-olds, unless they're very, very obvious and at the higher extreme end of the scale, we would tend to give them the benefit of the doubt if we like the rest of the horse as an athlete, if it moves well with these conformation problems.
And you're also, it's a moment in time. So you're looking at what's likely to improve and change in a good way, what will stay the same, and also what may become worse. So you're always assessing what will be in the future.
Just on those two, we just quickly go back if you can.
There we go, perfect.
We're talking about the forearms before. The photo on the left, the forearms do taper from the top of the forearm down to the knee, yet the horse on the right, the forearm is much stronger at the top and extends further down towards the knee.
More muscly.
There's a lot more natural muscle in the horse on the right than the one on the left.
So I don't know how we're going time-wise. Like there's a lot more. Are we back?
We're back.
Yep. So as I was saying, I'm not, I know that there are the hind limb to cover. There are a number of different things. It's up to you all. If we keep going, we're up and running. So I guess we keep going. Okay.
So the photograph on the left depicts a horse as what is called Pigeon Toad. You can see in its 2 feet pointing inwards.
Yeah.
And that
feet.
So what happens here is that the lateral side of each hoof, the outside of each hoof, often lands first. Now, when horses stride out, they tend to land fractionally laterally anyway. and they land heel first. But when they're pigeon-toed like that and turn in, like these ones are, that's putting more strain on the lateral cartilage on the outside of the leg, and can cause to some significant cartilage damage in their pasterns.
And it can also create pressure on the knee above it as well.
Absolutely.
So you'll see them start to push out on a knee, and it's when they push out, it's less efficient movement, and the way that they track is not straight and true. So on the right, there is a horse that is what we would call base wide. So the horse is standing wider on its feet than the width of its chest. So again, horses like this can be a bit shuffly, and they aren't going through and straight. So it's a less efficient stride pattern.
You can also say that this horse is also offsetting its knees. That the cannon bone leading out of the knee and the bottom bone in the knee sits outside the top bone of the knee. So that creates what we call offset knees. And that puts a lot of pressure on the middle plates of the knee, and as horses often much more susceptible to having knee chips, bone fractures on their knees with that sort of conformation.
And again, they tend to push out when they're in motion. So there's a deviation there that isn't, there are a few downsides, one from soundness and injury, and also from lack of efficiency to perform.
A lot of horses with that conformation defect also have create a lot of bone under the knee when they're growing. And you can see there in that photo that horse has got a lot of width in its bone between the knee and the ankle. And it's probably also getting splints starting to form, especially just under the right knee there, the one on the knee on the right of the photo. But that's probably getting a little bit too technical, but that's what can happen, as Rennie's pointing out on the screen. The horse also has quite wide feet.
It does have quite wide feet, yes. So it hasn't been shod yet, but the feet could use with a bit of collection. So all of these things we take in, and as we're taking time to go through and explain them, as I said, oftentimes when we're having a first look at a horse, we see all of this and it moving all in about 2 minutes. So, our eye is very, very trained to see a lot very efficiently. Here we go into the structure of the hind leg. Now, the hind leg is very important because it's where the power comes from and what makes a horse be able to push. So on the far left, we have correct. On diagram B, we have cow-hocked. Oh, here we go. So we swap back. That's okay. So on the side view, we have correct. Then we have sickle-hocked. So sickle-hocked, the hocks are midway on the hind leg, and the ability to push is determined a lot by the hock. So by push, I mean propel forward. So horses that are sickle-hocked, there can be a weakness there. If you are going to forgive this, a longer distance horse could perhaps get away with this more easily than a short distance horse. But they still, even if they're not 100% correct, they must still push. So that's we evaluate that. Now, on diagram D, there is post-legged, and post-legged has also to do with the hock and being very straight in the hind leg. So that horse is post-legged and also is soft in the hind pasterns by the look of it, which can happen. So typically a sprinter may get away with having a post-leg, but again, they can have more jar because there isn't as much flexibility to absorb shock, and they have to use their whole hind leg as one unit because the hock doesn't bend very much when they're post-legged. And on diagram E, being camped under, often is similar to being sickle hawk. They'll stand underneath themselves. So that's quite similar. So, we always look for a horse with a good hind leg. Now from behind, we have on diagram A, we have correct. On B, we have cow hocked. So the horse is the legs come in like a bit of a V and then go down. Oftentimes they are cow hocked. They come in and then they're splay footed. So again, that hourglass, similar to in at the knee. So they go in and then they go back out. So on diagram C, we have the horse that is cow hocked and splay footed. So again, when they are turned out behind, they don't push as efficiently. So you want them to be straight and be able to propel. Some horses, however, in time, with maturity, as they grow and develop, they will become wider and they will become stronger. So again, we're always evaluating if we think that the structure will improve, stay the same, or will it get worse? And that comes with experience. A horse that is base narrow, which is option E. Sorry, I skipped D. Which is option E. That the legs come down and then come down to a V at the bottom, and then they often what we call plat. So their way of moving is almost like a supermodel on the catwalk. So they have one leg in front of the other. So not the most powerful way to move. On option diagram F, you have a horse that is base wide. Again, they can get a bit lost in their action, be a bit sloppy, a bit shuffly, and just not be as efficient in their movement. Horses that are the opposite of this, also that are close, they can run into injury from hitting themselves, interfering. So all of these structures we're looking at. So here on the diagram, or sorry, on the photo, I'll let Paul, if you want to run through those.
This one here, look, it's hind leg conformation
on the left.
On the left, actually, the right foot tends to be turning in a little bit, but yes. Other than that, it is nice and straight. There's a nice line going through. It's possibly standing a little bit base wide, but it's pretty much spot on. It's maybe slightly turned in the right hind. Yeah, there just slightly, but it's pretty straight and true. The one on the right, it's Hocks. You can clearly see
hourglass shape,
inverted at this top part of the hock, and its feet below are definitely splaying outwards. So that's going to be losing the impetus of driving forward. There's going to be some energy dissipated and not being able to push as potentially as well as it should be off its hind feet and through its weakness in its inverted hocks.
So yes, and we're also, when we look at the hind leg, you're looking at muscle and muscle mass also. Now for Pastern conformation, so this is a bit of a review on what we spoke of earlier. So a good Pastern angle, as it says, is strong, and it has enough flexibility that it absorbs shock. Now, if the Pastern is, as the second picture, the middle picture, is weak or long or soft, they're more prone to injury, and also they are less efficient. So they're slower. They take more time to it's almost like they have to go up a hill every stride. They have to come up out of their pastern to then go and reach. So this can be a problem, one, for injury, and two, for speed. It can reduce speed. Now on the right, you have the upright pastern, so very stiff, very jarry. Often those horses, they don't extend as well in front, so they have a shorter stride rather than a longer stride, and they also jar. So there's a lot of concussion in the limb, which is not what you want. Here we go. So, yeah. So these are gait patterns or tracks that which a horse would move. So on the far left of the screen is the correct horse that comes through and tracks a straight line. On the next, which is what you want. That's what you want. Now on the next to the right is a horse that we call dishes. So it comes in each stride, so it's not an efficient line that's straight, and it can hit itself. Now on the next over to the right is a horse that the term is paddles. So the horse actually flips its hoof to the outside each stride. And again, not an efficient movement pattern and looks very sloppy in the air. And on the far right is a horse that what calls plats. So that typically is a horse that is base narrow, and they walk, as I said, like a supermodel on the runway. So one foot is in front of the other. Again, they can hit themselves, and it's not a powerful pattern to produce a winning horse. Okay, videos, right. So we're just watching this now, seeing the horse go side on, watching it come toward us. Looks a bit base narrow on that right front, pulling it in, pushing out on the right hock as it's walking away. Well, looks like it's stopped on us. So I'm not sure if that's playing for you all better than it is for us. There we go. Now that we can get it on here.
Just with the horses walking, you like to see a nice fluent action. Actually, we watch them walk from the head, because a lot of horses use their head when they walk, and a nice fluency in the right part of the stride. And they
Okay, we're back. So you were talking about the head.
Yes, when a horse walks, you can tell a lot by its walk, by its head carriage. And there's often a horse, you can see them when they walk, they'll actually get their head up at the wrong part of the stride. You want to see a horse that's going forward at the same time, using its head like a pendulum. And a lot of the horses you see, as the legs are going forward, the head's coming up. They're actually out of sync. And often those horses will gallop like that as well. They'll tend to get their head up rather than have their head driving forward as part of their body. You can tell a lot by a horse's walk, especially its side-on walk, how far its shoulders roll forward and extend, how far it's landing ahead of itself. A lot of stayers will have a longer, swoopier walk and get right under themselves with their hind leg. Some of the sprinters are a little bit more sharper tempo. And it's all these things that you take into account when you're watching a horse move. You like to see a lovely fluency. You like to have them walked on a firm surface so you can actually hear them walk, because the rhythm, the cadence, the sound of when they're walking is very important.
Yes, there's a lot with timing. And here we have another one. So that's another thing as well. Like this horse is quite a bit higher in the top of its hip. So its hindquarter looks higher than the rest of its body. And typically young horses, they grow behind first. So the horse may look a little unbalanced because he's high behind, but this is a growth, a part of their growth pattern, and will balance in future as the horse becomes more mature and is older.
When you're looking at a horse from side on too, you can get a fair idea about what stride they will have when they're galloping from their walk. And if you watch a horse walking from side on, you watch where its front foot lands and then where its hind foot lands. And often a horse with a long stride, its hind foot will land several centimeters further forward than its front foot lands. And that's what we call an overstep. And the bigger the overstep, normally the better, although sometimes horses can get too far under themselves. But most stayers have a bigger overstep than a sprinting type of horse.
Yeah, so long distance versus short distance.
A little bit hard to just make many comments off the video at the moment because it's not really going at real speed. So it's hard to make a lot of assessment just on this video as it's playing at the moment.
But yeah, so we're always looking at any deviations, the rhythm with which they walk, their movement, their enthusiasm, their behavior.
You like to see a horse drop its head like this one is and just go forward like that. And it's using its head as a pendulum. It's got its head low and going forward. You don't like to see a horse walking with its head up the whole time because they are normally out of rhythm with their body. You're looking at all these views. That's a very nicely balanced horse on that side-on shot. It's just a little bit difficult to the speed of the video at the moment to assess. And that's a good reason why we tell the sellers of the horses not to have slow motion on their video. It's not that these are slow motion. It's probably just the speed that the connection's going at the moment. That's a very nicely balanced horse. Length of rein, length of back, length of hindquarter. It's a very good pose. Great gaskins, which are the equivalent of the forearm, but in the hind leg.
Our calves, they're like our calves.
They're like our calf muscles. You get a lot of power from there. There's a lot goes into assessing each individual horse, and it's a combination of their structure, the way they move, and of course their genetics and their pedigree as well.
Yeah, and they're despite being by a certain sire or having a certain pedigree, there could be similarities due to sire pedigree, which we always look for, but you always judge the individual. Some families, human families, you may have one person that's very sporty and athletic and the other is less so. So you're always looking at each individual horse and really, I suppose, taking the whole picture in from attitude, structure, movement, as well as the family that it comes from.
As I mentioned before, there are a lot of what I call a physical genetic map, and because I've been doing it so long, I can find a horse that comes out and I think, it's not really looking like its father or its mother, but it's a really athletic, good-looking horse, and its colour may be a little bit different from what you'd expect the sire or the mother to throw, and you can always find where that's come from further back in the pedigree. And I've assessed a lot of good horses by being able to pick back 3 or 4 generations who the dominant progenitor is, sire in that sire line on both the father and mother's side, who have carried forward all its physical genetic traits and landed to make that horse look like it looks like. And have had a lot of success choosing a lot of very, very good horses by having that ability and past knowledge to delve back several generations to find that key physical genetic trait or traits that have come through from 3 or 4 generations back in the pedigree.
So this, while it may seem comprehensive, is really a brief overview of some of the things that we look at, some of the things that we use as a starting point for consideration when we're looking at if we think a horse is going to make an elite level athlete and be a champion, because that's what our objective is to find that for our clients. And I suppose there is a lot that goes into it, and a lot of time and years of experience, but it's something that we love and we enjoy doing, and have the results also that show that the statistics and the number of winners at a high level is very good when you compare to what's happening globally. So it's something that, while you don't want to brag, we are proud of the work that we've done and what we've accomplished, and we try very hard for our clients. It is an art, it is a science, and every one of us is always learning. We go back to our notes and we check what we've seen on horses that are champions, and we're always working to improve. And we love working with teams who are progressive, such as Alan and his crew, who are looking to buy the best horses for their clients and manage them in a positive way and achieve the best results. And as a team, I think that's the best way to operate.
I hope we haven't made it too complicated for you, but we've very much enjoyed doing this on behalf of Alan, and hopefully we can buy some very good horses for the group that is interested.
Yes.
Right. Cool.
Yes, and thank you to Rennie for being in the background and helping with the presentation and all of that support as well. It's much appreciated.
Aye. Oh, well, we're very much look forward to seeing Paul when you're returning to New Zealand. It probably has been a very long time, and so we'll go for a farm tour to Haunui Farm this coming Thursday, and hopefully the audience today will be able to see how things played out, and maybe they can pick on a few conformation defaults as they go, and maybe we'll bring some of them going to Karaka, and they can meet Paul, and then we can and Paul can probably give them another few advices when they're there.
No, it's a fantastic industry to be involved in. There's huge potential, and I think it's great that Alan is taking you and showing you these places, and I'm sure that you will greatly enjoy it.
Yeah. Oh, right. Well, so I think we covered quite a bit today, and we will be sharing the PowerPoints and the videos with the with the audience, and later on maybe we'll get them to ask any questions if they like. Yeah.
No problem.
Sure.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for your time, and again, we'll look forward to seeing Paul in New Zealand, and maybe with Catheryne sometime maybe in May. Well, we're going for the Broomere Sales and the Winling Sales.
For sure. Sounds good.
Okay. Thank you for having us on.
Yeah, thank you. You take care, and we'll see you shortly.
Okay.
Sounds good. Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Ay, cuéntamelo.
Yeah.
Mhm.